So, yeah. All right, word. So we are live. So welcome to another episode of Embrace the Suck. Tonight I have Staff Sergeant Gonzo with us. So the thing before I introduce him, man, the thing I find so crazy about the Marine Corps is stuff like this. We've never met each other, but yet we have a mutual friend, a mentor of ours, someone that we both call a close friend, Master Diaz. So somebody who's been there in our corner, someone that's pushed us and mentally, physically, emotionally. So it's so awesome to know that we know the same person, even though we're on completely different ends of the Marine Corps right now. So without further ado, welcome, Staff Sergeant Gonzo.
Awesome. Thanks. I appreciate it, Benny, for sure. Like you said, it is cool that we both know Master Ideas. It's even more awesome that we're able to link up right now with two people who don't know each other. However, we're both from, for example, New Jersey. Both were recruited, so I think we definitely have some ground to cover with each other that can relate. I
Yeah.
appreciate you having me on. A little bit about myself, right? So Stephen Gonzalez, currently 8411 now in Virginia Beach, Stephen CIC on the duty. Just got a couple months left. Originally, Com Bubba, so 0629. Getting ready to go back to the fleet here soon, but enjoying what's left of recruiting duty. So yeah, that's really it right now.
No doubt, man.
Other than that, yeah, born and raised Linden, New Jersey. Hung on Elizabeth a lot, so all the same stopping grounds that I'm sure you know, being with RS New Jersey
Yeah.
in the past.
Yeah, man. So so how does it feel? I did an episode earlier today with my buddy Torres, but how does it? I asked him the same thing. How does it feel to say like, well, he did our episode today was he's been off of duty for a month. He's in his time. He's about to PCS to San Diego, so he's already at that point where he's been off duty for a month. So you're on the verge of being done. How does that feel? Like to know that like this is soon will be behind you. How does that feel?
Honestly, it's a wild feeling because I mean, you start the duty thinking like, oh, I got 36 1 month tours to go, and then now as these that few months come, you can actually see the light at the end of the tunnel. You go to these all hands training, and you see slowly you start seeing the Marines leave, and you're like, oh, man, when is it my turn? But now
Yeah,
I was just saying with the guys last week or the week before, like, shoot, these are a lot of new Marine recruiters out here. I don't even know these guys. Like, I'm the old guy on the block, so that's how I know that my
yeah,
time it's slowly it's almost done. The light's there. So it feels
yeah.
good. It feels good to know that the 3 years. It felt like forever, but at the same time, it felt like it was yesterday. I checked in on the streets.
And it does it feel surreal? Like how does like are you like wow, like this is like it's that time like
I mean, yeah. I mean, it feels good to know that it's over. I mean, not a terrible way, but like you get there like so. I guess anxious to get from BRC, basic recruit school, to the streets. You're like, oh well, this is gonna be the longest thing ever, and it was like just a short snippet. It's just 3 years of your
yeah.
life compared to whatever time you do in the military and in the Marines, and like it's a real like I don't even know what to talk about. I'm sure I'm not even gonna know what to say when it's time for me to leave it because it's definitely a lot of goods, a lot of bads. I grew the most on this duty, and I'll tell that to anybody. Yeah, for
So
sure.
what
I grew.
I'm glad that you said that. So what do you mean by that? Because that when I like to hear these conversations, just like we just said before we hopped on, we're both on the same Facebook page and we see so much disgruntled people talking about the horrible stuff, but nobody ever wants to talk about the positive things. So when you say that, you've grown, you've matured, what do you mean by that? Like what happened on this duty that you went from one person to another? Like how do you feel that this duty has helped you? Like what are your thoughts on that?
Got you. Yeah, for sure. I would say obviously with the beginning statement right there, you get nothing but horror stories coming out, and you're like, oh man, here we go, welcome to the suck, right? And then the feeling of most Marines are leaders, or they should be leaders coming out to the duty. They're not brand new Marines. They're corporals to gunnies. So hopefully no one's a PFC coming out in the streets. So with that, most of those individuals are leaders, or at least think they're leaders. I had a one-track mind coming out with leadership and coming out to the duty where it's primarily staff sergeants, gunnies, senior sergeants. It's a whole other mindset. You can't work with these Marines as if they're junior Marines or younger individuals. Most of these guys are close to an age, so it's a different, I guess, a different way. So if you wasn't used to it, for example, I was used to leading Marines and moving and hey, let's get this done. you're gonna follow me, let's go, opposed to, hey, we're all the same rank and now I gotta lead you. And which is the hardest thing to do. For every interview I sit down with an individual, I let them know the hardest thing to do in life is to lead your peers. And 100%, that's what I got thrown to here, is to leading my peers. Which I was able to effectively do that with in-state. That's why I say, like, I grew the most mentally as a leader in so many different ways. Like, this is definitely something I'll look back at and I'm like, wow, this is going to help me for when I get to the next obstacle.
Yeah. And that's something, I was talking to my boy about today, and he said a lot of stuff. Like, I'm actually kind of glad that I did his episode and then did this episode. This is the first time I did 3 episodes in one day.
Yeah.
So, but it was a good thing, because at first I didn't want to, because I was like, bro, I'm gonna be emotionally drawn. Like, like, this is my 6th hour on an episode today. But the thing about it though was that, like, and my wife was the one who said this. She was like, if you reschedule tonight, what if his episode had led into this episode? And I was like, you're not wrong. And a lot of what my boy Torres had said is already leading into this. So one of the things that he had said is that when he came, he was a staff sergeant when he went out on the duty, right? And he said that the first thing he said to himself when he went on the duty was, I'm a Lance Corporal. He said, yep. I came to the office and I immediately, he was the only staff sergeant in the office. The rest of them were sergeants. And he was like, yo, I didn't care that the senior recruiter was a sergeant. I saw it as we were all Lance Corporals in the same fight, the same mission. And if they could teach me something, I was going to take it from them. And that's the biggest part of it, at least for me. And I always felt that way too, is that, when you come out on this duty, for me, I'm a reservist, so it's very different for me. But for the active duty world, when you get histed or whatever, like, you're coming out on this duty, and this is the first time in the past 10 years you're new at something. So you went from being the pinnacle or the top of your MOS to now being brand new at an MOS, and you haven't felt that in 8 to 10 years. So now for you to have to get guidance from somebody, for you to have to say, hey, I don't know what I'm doing, it's just so different to you. It's foreign to you. So a huge part of what he was saying was that he was like, hey man, if I can give advice to anybody, come out here humble, come out here understanding that you don't know what you're doing. You have no idea this is a new thing for you. So when you came out here on the duty, how did you receive it? Like, were you good at first? Were you not good? Like, what was the first beginning that you witnessed, that you felt?
I got you. So I'm a pretty outgoing person. I'm not an introverted individual. Like, I like shooting shit with people, so that's what I do. So coming out, I wasn't nervous or like, oh, here we go, 36 months. I knew I volunteered. I knew what I was getting myself into. I was priorly stationed close by to where I got my binding request, so it was pretty much home for the last couple of years before I came on the duty. So for me, I already knew the area pretty well, but I didn't have to humble myself too much. But I did know, like, I don't know everything, so I'm ready to be a sponge. So when I saw the staff sergeant getting ready to PCS, and he was like number 1, number 2 recruit in the area, I was like, okay, well, that's the guy, and I needed to start stoking up some knowledge, and that's what I did. And I was cool with not knowing. I went with open mind, like, hey, brother, I'm the new guy, whether we're in the same amount of time or not. Teach me everything you know on the way out, because clearly you figured it out. And I did that, and I did fairly well. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say I was the best recruiter in the world, but I definitely did really well my first couple of months. Like, I was only on as a canvassing recruiter for like 6-7 months before I was put in the seat. So I did pretty well, really well, and it worked out. So
that was, and I'll be honest, man, this is something that I've said numerous times, and we were talking about before. Like,
yeah,
it's so hard to, and I can only imagine how it feels from the command standpoint. Like, when you put somebody in the seat of a staff at SNCOIC and they've only been on the street 7 months, it's like, it's got to be a huge risk.
Yeah, 100%. I agree.
And the thing is like, and I understand from their standpoint, it's like, well, they needed a staff at SNCOIC. Somebody else was PCSing, right? So it's constantly changing, ebbs and flows, right?
Yeah,
but at the same time, though, it sucks when a lot of times you're putting people in the seat who just aren't, one, ready for it. Mm-hmm. 2, they haven't gained the skills yet for it, because like we were talking about before we started the episode was, I've seen so many staff in COICs that You know, if you can't close and if you can't do your follow-ups as a staff NCOIC, that's part of your job, bro. On
What are you
Friday,
doing? Yeah.
on Friday, you're supposed to be doing RSS training. How can you give training if you just learned how to do the job yesterday? And
Yeah.
and then it trickles down into the, and then you have Marines that are, lacking training. You have substandard Marines that are not making ends meet. And then it's like, okay, well, what are we really doing to help them out? So how did you feel when when your CO or who, your master, your RI was like, hey man, I know you only been on the bag 6 months, but we're gonna make you a staff at CIC. Like, how did that feel?
I mean, it was definitely like overwhelming. However, I'm a type of dude. I like the challenge. Like I look for some responsibility. So as it happened, as the time was transitioning, I was like, okay, well, it's probably gonna happen. So get ready. Now I felt good about it. The biggest thing is what you're saying is like without that time of learning that craft, my effectiveness as a brand new staff in TRC, I was a hustler on the street. I was just writing contracts. Like now you expect me to lead a team to do that without the proper training. Like exactly what you said. How do I train individuals that have been on the streets longer than me, and I just did better for a couple months than them? So it was
Yeah.
definitely hard at first, and I would say now, over at least past the year mark as a staff in TRC, you definitely get those tools of the trade, how to close, how can you help you guys out, how can you train them,
Yeah.
how to do this, use the system correctly, just the little things, the stuff that you don't know at the 6-7 month mark, like I did. I would say to my Marines who watched this before, like when I was that new boss, I was probably terrible. And then now it's completely different. I'm confident in my abilities over time. So I would say,
So did you so
yeah,
when you were becoming a boss, you said it before, but so so when you became the staff officer IC, did you have Marines in your office that were senior to you on the duty?
oh yeah, I was the new guy on the block.
How did how did that feel?
Uh, Me, I try not to. It was, I mean, how did it feel? It was kind of hard because these individuals are looking at me like, man, you just got here yesterday. And then
Yeah.
and some of them, I mean, I had some really good Marines that I was working with, so it wasn't like a bunch of dirtbags trying to work with me. But it was awesome. So they understood that I was new. So when I didn't really know how to effectively, I guess, help them or train them, close with somebody, they understood because I would probably have half the time on the street as them.
So
So
you were
it was something they
transparent about
understood.
it.
Yeah, 100%. I wouldn't be like, oh, you go do this because it's got to be like this, and I'm the best at this.
Bro, and see, and that's the thing, man, is that you gotta be, because like when I became a staff at CIC, when I was already on the duty for 2.5 years when I
Yeah.
became a staff at CIC. And well, no, 2 years. And I had gone to this office, and it was like a random spur of the moment, like, hey, you're going to Atlantic City tomorrow type thing. And I went through staff and CIC course, boom. Like I was planned. So what had happened to me was the plan for me to be a staff at CIC was there, but
Hmm.
the time and everything was not there.
Yeah.
So I was already at the staff and CIC course, and while I'm at the staff and CIC course, there's nowhere. I don't know where I'm going. I just know that I'm graduating the program and I'm gonna be a staff and CIC, but I have no idea where I'm going. So all of a sudden, I'm at staff and CIC course, and we get a call, and they're like, "Hey, so and so got a DUI. You're gonna go to Atlantic City the day you check in, like
Cool.
the day you come back from staff and CIC course. You're going over to HC." And what had happened was is that when I had gone there, there was one dude that was I don't know if he was senior to me, but me and him were like at the same time, and he had been in Atlantic City the whole time he was on recruiting duty. So he felt slighted that it wasn't him that was made into a staff in CIC.
Yeah.
And I immediately could tell that when I walked in. Like I
Yeah.
could tell that I could tell the vibe. So immediately I was like, hey, listen, man, like I have nothing to do with this. I'm not the one who said I want to live 2 hours away from my family. Like I didn't choose this. Like they said, hey, you're going there. Here I am. And me and him got to know each other. And I think it's important to be transparent because a lot of people will be the other way. They'll be like, hey, I'm your fucking boss. Listen to me. That's it. And that's like, bro, we can't live like that. We can't live like that. Not on this duty at least.
No, yeah, for sure. I'm a victim of it. Like my first team, I didn't have that issue with moving to another team later on. I was the junior guy. There was the senior guys. There was some disgruntledness. I typical Marine want to buck up with each other, and it definitely didn't go nowhere. It was just Marines bumping heads, and it didn't cause
Yeah,
any productivity. The team was a rough team for sure.
yeah.
So that's
So
a
so
yeah.
so one of the things I kind of wanted to talk about with you is you being so you were a recruiter for 6 months and then transitioned into becoming a staff in COIC. So when you had first got out here, recruiting duty was I guess the best term is normal. And then
Yeah,
as you got and then all of a sudden COVID kicks off. Then after you think you figure out COVID, this thing called Emirates comes out of nowhere. So you've been through the beginning all the way through this thing.
yeah,
Myself, I was nearing at the time I didn't know it was going to be the end of my tour, but I got hit with COVID, and then October of 2020 was when I got off the bag and I went to just finish my EAS time, and I got out in March.
yeah.
So for you, how has it been coming into the duty one way, and then as you're transitioning out, you see a pandemic happens, the schools close, you can't do this, you can't do that. Now this thing called Emirates comes. Like, how has that developed you, and how have you decided to how have you overcome it?
Yeah. I would say it's been seasons, like you're saying. You got the seasons where recruiting duty was a little different. I would say a little easier back then, and then because we had our way that we were doing things, and then you have the COVID season where everybody was like unsure of how we're going to do business, and then we had to adapt like the Marines do, and we find, like you said, schools are closed. Okay, where are we going to find these guys? We're going to have to change our angle, which I think over time definitely wasn't too bad. So the COVID excuse of recruiting kind of died out after a while. And then, like you said, you got this Emeralds, which was a completely different beast, what we're not used to, where everything that we were doing from way before I was on the streets is no longer what we can do anymore, is not what we're used to. So it's definitely a different beast. Uh, so just seasons, number one, to answer that question. And then how to overcome it is the same thing. Like, you got the tattoo policy that changed, and it helped us. At the same time, something else. So every time, the way I look at it, and I'm sure for the Marines who recruit before me and after me, they can say, well, they're going to give us something and they're going to take something away, and
Bro,
we're gonna have to constantly adapt to it.
thank you. So here's my thing, and I had this conversation with Master Diaz the other day, and I'm gonna just bring it up because it was a great conversation. I mean him talk all the time. I
Yeah,
FaceTime. I love FaceTime, and I just FaceTime that dude just because he'll be like, bro, 5:30 in the morning, he's in the gym. I'm like, yo, what's up? And he's like, bro, why are you FaceTiming me? I'm like, I'm just saying, hey, what's up? You know what I mean? So I hit him up, and me and him were talking, and like I said, I've known him since I think I was a corporal, so I've known him for like over 10 years.
there you go.
And one of the things that I had said to him was, back when I was a Lance Corporal and I was a rec aide, there was this master gunnery sergeant. He's still in the Marine Corps. He's an I think he's on the national. He's on the train. He's on
Yeah,
the one of the district training teams. And this guy he is now a master gunnery sergeant, but at the time he was a mass sergeant. And one of the things that he always said, and it stuck with me, is like if a recruiter said to him, "Hey, mass sergeant, I'm trying," he would say, "Motherfucker, how about you do? Trying is not a course of action. It does nothing for me. I need you to do." So the other day, I was having this conversation with Master Diaz, and I was like, I'm not saying that these things haven't made recruiting duty harder. I'm not saying that COVID hasn't changed recruiting duty. I'm not saying that Emerald hasn't changed recruiting duty. But in my opinion, we've created this environment where excuses have become okay. Where when I was a lance corporal or a corporal, if I had said to Master Gunnery Sergeant so and so, "Oh, I tried today," he would have said, "What, bitch?" If I had told him, "Oh, it's F ma'am," he would have said, "What?" If I had said to him, "Oh, it's COVID," what? And that's my thing, is that, like you just said, these are all just seasons of life, and as Marines, we've been taught to adapt and overcome. So when these things come into our lives, okay, well, I have to change up my battle rhythm. When we're in Iraq or Afghanistan, SOEs change, TTPs change. We're constantly changing what we're doing. Battle rhythm constantly changes. So that's the same thing here. We were presented with a new problem. Okay, well, how do we adapt and overcome to that problem? Like why? And I hate, like, some people are like, oh well, why are you computing it to that? But like the reality of it is that if you're in an OIF or OEF, or if you're in a new war or whatever, you're not gonna sit here and be like, oh well, Afghan happened today. No, you're gonna go and fix it. You're gonna figure out, okay, this is the new problem. How do I get around it? How do I add this into my battle rhythm? How do I change this? So that's my question for you, is as a staff NCOIC, how have you been able to navigate effectively through recruiting duty, through COVID? Like, what changed in your battle rhythm as these things were coming at you?
Yeah, I got you. So the fundamentals of the how doesn't change too much. However, certain portions of the how will change. Like when COVID happened, the how wasn't found immediately. The how had to found as we went through COVID. The how with emeralds wasn't is not going to happen immediately. We're not going to find every single country we need during that time frame immediately, but over time, the how is going to be developed. So I would say the how, the foundation that doesn't change, is going to be the involvement with the staff in CRC. Like one thing that I was talking with one of my other staff in FCs recently was, it's like not every leader is going to be the same. Not every staff in FC is going to be the same. I'm not telling staff in FCs to get on the phones and make a million phone calls with their brains, but there has to be a level of an involvement, because like we're talking earlier, you expect me, like when my Marines are looking at me, they're expecting me to be the guy who's closing on everybody. But if I can't show them what I expect, I can't show them how to close, I can't show them how I want their TCs to be done, I can't show them how I'm out ACing at the gym or something. If I don't show them how I do it, then why am I expecting them to do it? So then the how is, hey, I'm going to show you, and this is how we're going to get down, and this is how we're going to adapt and overcome to this specific beast. But if you're not doing that, and I'm not telling, like I said, I'm not telling every staff is going to see to make 100 phone calls with the Marines, but something has to be done to show them, like, hey, this is what I'm expecting from you.
Bro, and I'm glad that you said that, because so I have a very close friend of mine that just became an 8412. Like literally just graduated CRC, just got his gold tag. I hit him up on FaceTime and I saw it and I was like, yo, let me see it. Let me see that gold tag. Let me see it. I was like, and when I was talking to him, he said to me, I gotta go right now. I said, oh, what are you doing? He said, oh, I'm ACing with my Marines. And immediately I was like, yo, stop. 8412s don't do that. And I'm kidding. But I was like, bro, I fucking love it, because I want you to be the 8412 that I couldn't become. You know what I mean? Because, of everything that happened, whatever. But like, I want you to be who I wanted to be, right? For those Marines, because they deserve it. Now, mind you, the day before this conversation, I saw another 8412 who didn't show up to work till 11 o'clock in the morning, then went to the gym till 3 o'clock. And then throughout this entire time, his Marines were working their asses off. And that's like what you're saying, is that you have to have, in my opinion, it's not COVID, it's not emeralds. It's fucking leadership. That is the problem across MCRIC. In my opinion, it is the fact that there's people who, I've been a recruiter, you've been a recruiter. If I walk in the office and my boss isn't closing on kids, isn't doing staff and COIC follow-ups, isn't helping towards his mission, and let's be real here, it's not my mission letter, it's yours. If I miss the mission, nothing happens to me. I'm gonna get, maybe I'll get a bad fit rep, but realistically, it's your mission letter.
Yeah.
So like when you're working in an office and you're really trying to work hard and you want to be successful and all this stuff, but then you realize that you're the guy who's leading the office isn't even showing up, isn't even there, isn't doing what he needs to do. He's not helping with this, he's not helping with that. well, then it causes an issue. It causes a problem. And then, you have these Marines who are like, bro, if my boss isn't going to work for his own mission letter, then why should I?
Yeah,
Like
100%.
if my boss, I told my boy like straight out when I was sitting there, I told my boy straight out, I was like, bro, if my boss, because when I first started out on the streets, I had this gunny, he's an 8412, one of my best friends to this day. But when I had started off on the duty, he would go out and just do whatever. He would just go, and no one would know where the hell he was at. So me and my boy Romain, we literally got to the point where we would to a point, we'd be like, you know what, we're not going to work. We would be like, you know what, we're going to do whatever, we're going to chill. And then when he shows up and he says, hey, why haven't you done anything with Chris? And be like, oh, well, you weren't at work yet, so we just decided that we'd wait for you to show up. and then immediately that put him in check. That put him in gear, because we were like, yo, we're not saying we're not going to work, but clearly when we did that, he wasn't going to call the RI or the ARI and say, hey, they're not working because I'm not working. He wasn't going to throw himself under the bus. So we were like, and mind you, we were both of us were 2.5 recruiters. Like we were killing it. And we were like, listen, like if we're going to be here every single day busting our fucking asses, then why aren't you here beside us? And that's the thing, is like what you're talking about is that, again, I don't expect like you said yourself, I don't expect every recruit, every staff SNCOIC to be out there slinging 150, 200 phone calls. That's not your business. That's not your job. But in my opinion, you should be able to at least walk out into your office, supervise, because in the Fleet Marine Corps, right? What's your job in the Fleet Marine Corps?
0629.
You said comm, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you have to be able to show your lance corporals and corporals how to fix frequencies, how to fix things, right? Okay.
100%.
So if you're the boss of an office and you can't come out into a TC power hour and pick up a phone and get a same-day appointment, then are your Marines really going to look at you and be like, oh, yo, that's the guy I got to follow?
Exactly.
And that's the thing about it, is that like if you show your Marines, hey, I'm going to work for you. Hey, I'm going to work with you. I'm going to work beside you. Hey, you know what, man? I could tell that you've had a long weekend. Go enjoy your weekend. Be with your family. I got you. I'll take your appointments. I'll do your MEPS run. I'll do this. I'll do that, because I know you need to calm down.
You said it, man. You said it. I'll say it like this. If you're 8411, whether you're a canvasser recruiting or a staff SNCOIC, we are all in this stuff together, and we are feeling the same pain. But if you can't drop tags for one of your boys who give us some time, or he has to go do something else real quick, you can't do it for him and drop tags and be confident that you can do it well, then what are we even doing? And then for the 8412s, hey, you signed up for this, so let's go. Like if you're in the trenches, like let's go. There's no other excuse. So
yeah,
someone had to hear it. But I agree with you for sure.
So through all of that's going on with this, have you, like, how have you, so you've been through this whole thing from the top to the bottom throughout this whole thing. How has it affected you mentally, physically, emotionally? Like you're a father. I saw on your, I was looking you up and stuff and understanding you, like you're a father, you're a husband, like so how are you maintaining all of that? How are you maintaining the family life while being a staff SNCOIC, while being a mentor, while trying to be a leader? Like how is that on you?
Shoot, I would say that's what makes this duty the hardest. Simply because, I mean, like you said, I'm a father. My son's almost 2 years old, so I had my son as he was born. As I took over, like I think I took over staff SNCOIC like maybe a month after my son was born, and so it was definitely something. It's really hard. I mean, you're gonna give 100% to this duty in the hours. I mean, you know how it's like. So you spend all this time around these Marines that office becomes your home. I might as well just pay rent there. And but you have to still juggle being that awesome father, that awesome husband, still juggle being, still going to the gym, still doing the things that matter the most, still to stay sane, be a Marine, whatever the case may be. And it's real, that's what makes it hard. That's how it affects your mental. So I would say for me, I mean, I'm still doing fairly well. There's been ups and downs on my success on the duty as a staff HSC or career, but I would say uh, it has affected me mentally, physically. Should I drink a lot more, like every other Marine on the duty? But I would say it has affected me to the point where I realized like, this duty is a beast. It's almost over, and that's why when I do get the ribbon, I'll be able to look at it like, yup, that was the hardest one earned, 100%, because every single day was like a deployment every single day. I know you mentioned traveling. I got quite a commute myself, so I know like it's terrible, like working all these hours, and then you come home and then you have to put back on the dad hat, the husband hat, even though I'm exhausted from the long day I just had, and then I have to wake up early to get in the gym to stay fit so I could prepare myself for when I leave here. So it's hard. I think it affects all the Marines mentally, and which ties into like the most thing is like taking care of the Marines on the duty, taking care of yourself on the duty. And I don't think it gets done enough. I don't think whether it be internally with our RSS or with the command group that it gets like, hey, check on your Marines. How are these guys doing? Like, yeah, they're on pace. They got phase line. They made mission. They didn't make mission. But how are the Marines? And that's definitely not getting done across the board, whether we're talking lower stuff, the highest level. Yeah, I mean, there's some level of care, but not enough for sure.
No, and I'm glad that you brought that up because it's really something that I've you know I try I like you said before we talked about the Facebook thing, and I made the one status and I said shut the fuck up and grind, and everybody and their mother went like all fucking, they got all emo about it, and it's like, bro, listen, if you haven't listened to my podcast and you don't know who I am, then I can understand where you could come from that. But my thing is this. Number one, I'm never going to tell you to neglect mental health. I'm never going to tell you that. And, like I brought up today in my other podcast with my buddy Torres and my boy, I had no idea. I knew this dude for 3 years. And on the podcast, he's like, oh, yeah, man, halfway through my tour, I called Military One Source and I started getting counseling daily, and no one in the RS knew. My boss didn't know. My recruiters didn't know. I would go for half-hour sessions and then go back to work. No one had any idea. And I was like, and he took it upon himself to go and do that. And my thing is that when it comes to this shit, when it comes to this, is that like we've all been taught how to just look for warning signs. And not even that, it's just talking about like being a human being. Like if a Marine shows up late to work, instead of chewing him out, hey man, what's going on? Why were you late today? And then on top of that, it's like, bro, we know we're on the duty. We know we're on this hellacious duty. So as staff and COICs, and this is my biggest thing, like for the staff and COIC seats, right? Your job as a staff and I think, in my opinion, when you go to staff and COIC course, when you go to these courses, they don't talk about, like, they talk about the 7 duty and responsibilities, right?
Yep.
But nobody says, hey, motherfucker, you are the goalie and you're the dude who needs to stop all the shit from them. They don't need to see what the command's doing. They don't need to see or hear what the command's doing. You're the filter and you're the one that needs to protect them. And I, for instance, when I was on the duty, we had this CO who came in and he was like, hey, I'm going to give power back to the staff and COIC.
Yeah.
If you want to send your Marine on leave, go ahead and send them on leave. If you want to send the Marine home, go ahead and send them home. So all of a sudden, things changed. I was literally saying, hey, man, go home. Hey, man, go home. Hey, I got you. Go home. Hey, you have a rough day today. Go home. Go home. I would call wives. I got to the point where I would call my recruiters' wives and be like, hey, is he home? And his wife would be like, no, he's not home. And then I would call my recruiter and I'd be, bitch, I sent you home 3 hours ago. Why are you not home with your family? Like, I sent you home to be home with your family and you're not home with your family. Oh, I'm not ACing. Like, that happened to me all the time. Like, and now, mind you, I love the grind. Like, I love my dude. Like, my dude Durkee, I love him. I love the work ethic. But I'm like, bro, I sent you home. Go home and be with your family. And what I'm saying, and the reason for me saying this is that As staff NCOICs, we've lost sight of that. We've lost sight of bro, you've been working like a dog for 5 days straight, for a month straight, for this month straight. Go home. And then what people don't understand is that when you start doing that for your Marines are appreciative of that. When you start taking the flack for them, it's just like in the Fleet Marine Corps, dude. If staff sergeant always takes ass chewings for all these Marines, I'm gonna do anything for my staff sergeant. Same thing in the freaking recruiting world. If my boss is allowing me to go home and he'll deal with this and he'll deal with that and he'll deal with this and he'll deal with that, I will never let that Marine miss mission. Like, and that was my thing with my boss. Like I told you, like in the beginning when I met my boss, I didn't really like him. But as much as me and him bumped heads, he would never ever allow me to get chewed out by anybody. He would stand right in front of the master guns, right in front of the master sergeant, in front of any other staff in COIC and say, hey, if you have a problem with my Marine, come to me. So immediately I was like, I can't let him down. I can't let him miss mission. And that's the thing that I feel like a huge part of it's lost is that staff NCOICs aren't giving those Marines that time. They're not saying, hey, sir, this Marine's been killing it. I need to give him a week off. Let me give him some leave. Like this Marine wrote 4 back-to-back. What are we going to give him in return? Because if we just keep whoring him out, like I had this Master Guns that literally said to me, what happens to the best whore in the whorehouse? He said, she gets whored out. And I'm like, I get it. I get Master Guns. I get it. But it's not okay. Like, we need to give these Marines time to just recoup, because realistically, if you give them time, if we're going to go off the whorehouse thing, if you give her time for her hold to close a little bit, it's going to feel a little bit better, right? So like, like that's the reality of it is that like there's Marines out there who could do so much, but mentally they're fatigued, they're stressed out, they don't know where to turn, they're done emotionally and physically, and we just need to give them the time to recoup. But at the same time, it's tough because I know myself, like I've told Marines, hey man, you know what? Go home, I'll see you on Monday. And then Monday they come back and they're worse than they were on Thursday. So it's such a hard balance. So as a staff NCOIC, what are some of the things that you've thought about, like some of the things that you've come up with to try to make it better, more effective? Like how do you deal with your office and your Marines? Like what do you try to do?
I would say that what's working for me recently for this year with a new team, build a competition within each other. But the biggest thing is what you were saying. Like I got one guy who's doing fairly well, and he's on his leave. My man got to go to Disney World for the weekend. But the whole time he's gone, in the back of my mind, Stafford says he's like, I need this guy back because he's about to make some moves for me. And you don't want to message him, but hey, bro, when you get back, we're gonna close some loops. But it's hard because it's a constant grind. You're constantly giving, and then if you don't give back to the guys or give them that time or give yourself that time, then like you said, you get spent completely exhausted. So to keep it, I would say once you get your team or your Marines on a pace where like, hey, we are all bought in, like let's do this. This is how we're gonna do it. Then you're giving that leeway to say, hey, all right, you're gonna take this break here. You're gonna take that day there. Hey, come in at this time. Hey, let's go to the gym instead of doing this right now. But we can't do that if we're not winning. And that's what sucks on recruiting duty. It's like, oh, we're not winning, so we gotta grind some more. And that's where you tap into the mental of everyone. It's like, oh, I gotta keep the morale up. Am I really doing it like this?
Yeah.
So,
and that's something too, like, and I never, I've had this conversation, but I never really talked about it yet. But, that's like when you're coming up to your monthly planning, right? Realistically, what we should be doing is saying, hey man, when do you want to take time off with your family? All right, you want to take time off a month and a half from now, you want to go away and see your family. All right, word. Where do we gotta be for you to go there? Because this is my thing. I don't, as a staff NCOIC, I don't want you to go away on leave and spend your whole entire time on leave thinking about, wow, when I get back, I'm not going to have nothing. I don't want you to have this anxiety in your head like, wow, I'm going to fail, I'm going to fail, I'm going to fail. Okay, so how do we get our prep time ready so that you can go on leave and still come back healthy? Because a week of no prospecting, it's going to hurt you. And you
Yeah.
might feel that. You might feel that 30, 60, 90 days. So a lot of what I would do is I would tell my Marines straight out, like, listen, man, when you go on leave for that week, I, I'm a prospect for you for that week. I'm a prospect for you because I don't want you to lose momentum for an entire week. So I'll make 100 TCs a day. I'll still sit down with kids. I'll set appointments. I'll get packs because realistically, at the end of the day, I'm a staff NCOIC. It's my mission letter.
Yep, that's
So
for you.
I'm gonna so I'll just like that gap sector that's away on leave. I'll just take it up. Like and in my opinion, if I'm a successful staff NCOIC, there's no reason why for 1 week out of the month I can't do that for my Marines. Because now what I'm doing in that week of time, I'm working, I'm using that time to TC next to my other Marines. So while I'm teaching with next to those other Marines, we're doing, call for fire or whatever the hell they call it.
Yeah.
You can watch me TC. We go 1-for-1. I'm listening to you TC. You're listening to me TC, and you're watching me, and I'm watching you, and you're critiquing me, and I'm critiquing you. I'm setting appointments. You're setting appointments, and all the while I'm working for that other Marine.
Yeah.
And so that this way, when he comes back, I can be like, hey man, you know what? I got you 3 appointments for this day. I got you 1 NWA while you were gone. This is him. Da 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 da. I introduce you. Blah blah blah. You meet the parents. Blah blah blah. And now you were actually able to be gone on leave and actually essentially drop your pack just
Yeah.
so someone else could hold on for it and you could enjoy your family. Because like I remember, when my daughter was born, height of COVID, in the hospital. I was with my daughter, and I had projections on deck. I had projections going up, and I had kids on deck. I had shippers, and I'm calling MEPS. It's 5:30 in the morning, and I'm in the hospital, newborn baby and my wife, and I'm calling my MEPS liaison, and he literally hung. He chewed my ass out. He said, Bennett, you are on baby leave. You have a newborn daughter and a wife in the hospital. I'm hanging up the phone right now. I will deal with your A gunner. Click. And like that was the first time ever that I had someone on recruiting duty be like, hey, motherfucker, take care of your family because that's what's important right now. I will deal with your A gunner. I will deal with all the other stuff because that's what I got to do. But that right there, when he did that for me, bro, that shit meant the world to me. My CEO didn't do that. My sergeant major didn't do that. They kept calling me all day long. But the MEPS liaison was like, hey, man, deal with your family, deal with what's going on, be there for your child that was just born into this world. I will deal with your A gunner. And that alone gave me so much respect for that man, gave me so much, like, I wanted to work for him, even though he doesn't have a mission later. He's just a MEPS liaison. But like
Mhm.
it just gave me so much more appreciation for him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. And it's a thing that on this duty, I would say it gets people put the blinders on. For example, like what you just said, like what people are doing for you in that scenario is called leadership. They're trying to take care of you. And we preach as we sit down with these individuals, like, hey, it's a brotherhood. I might not know you from a hole in the wall, but because you're a Marine, I'm gonna take care of you. This is how I'm gonna do it. We preach that, but then sometimes on the duty, we tend to not do that. You always hear like we're Marines first, we're Marine recruiters, and it's true. Like dudes are forgetting that we're not just recruiters. It's not only about sales. 100%, I'm down for some sales, but you're forgetting that we're Marines, and that's why we're struggling. That's why we're in a bad spot. Like,
Bro,
don't forget we're Marine.
and that's what I'm telling you, man. Like if I could tell the Combat of the Marine Corps, if I could sit down with some CG and tell them that, like, I remember I met the CG for when I was a sergeant. I had I met two different CGs, and they both asked me like, "How are you so successful?" And I looked at both of them at separate times because it was two different people, and I was like, "Well, sir," they were like, "If you could say anything to anybody in Mickrick, what would it be?" And I was like, "This isn't an individual duty." And they were, and the general was like, "What do you mean?" And I was like, "Well, sir, like our whole careers, we've been taught to never be an individual, and then all of a sudden." 8, 10 years into your career, you go on recruiting duty and you're told, hey, it's an individual duty. And sir, it's not. Like what happened to unit cohesion? What happened to, being one with each other, like being a team? Like what happened to that? All of a sudden it's an individual. It's like, no, it's not, man. And that's the thing about it is that when you come out here, I agree with what you're saying because I said that to my CEO. Well, I said that to my last CEO. I said to him, I said, sir, I think because he wanted us to read the book Legacy that was about
Mhm.
the rugby team, right? The All Blacks. And he asked everybody in the room, all the staff and COICs and higher ups, he was like, hey, what did you get from the book? And I immediately said, well, we've lost our legacy. And he was like, what do you mean by that? And I was like, we don't do anything Marine Corps related. We're on recruiting duty, but we don't do anything that has to do with the Marine Corps. All we do on Marine Corps recruiting duty is MC3. We don't go to balls because their COVID canceled them. We don't do mess nights. We don't do anything. We don't do unit PT. We do nothing that has to do with the Marine Corps. So how do you expect these Marines to operate as Marines when for the next 3 years of their life they're going to do nothing that has to do with the Marine Corps?
Yep.
And then the funny thing was is I had a gunny who was in this room and she was like, well, that's your job, Staff Sergeant. And I was like, yes, with my 4 or 5 Marines, every Friday when we make mission, when we make phase line, we go out and we celebrate. Yes, cool, because we're a fire team. But what happened to the whole unit doing these things? What happened to Marines being Marines? Where has that gone? When you come out on the duty, it's gone. Not every RS, but majority of places, you don't have time for that. You're not giving time to the Marines to be Marines. You're not giving time to them to do these different things that we've created in history. And then they don't feel like Marines because the only Marine thing they're doing is running a PFT and a CFT.
Yep. Shoot, it's right. I would say kudos to my RS. I mentioned it back exactly what you said because I heard you say this the same exact thing in a prior episode. I brought it up. I
Yeah.
was like, we're not doing another Marine stuff, but you expect us to be Marines. And thank God finally some stuff's happening. Some unit PT, the little events. Mixing and matching with the RSSs who wouldn't normally see each other when we get it all hands. So I mean, Marines are being force fed some cohesion, but I think that they need it. You need it. You can't
Yeah.
let go of what we do. So you're hitting it around the head. I agree with that.
No,
And
and that's the thing, with it is that like one of the things my old RI, not the past one that I left, but for before him, what he started doing was he was having small group all hands. So instead of having the whole entire RS come to one place, he was having different RSs, like 3 RSs meet in one place, three
yep.
RSs meet in one place. So this way you were able to build unit cohesion, you were able to have these small unit groups, you were able to learn from one another, you were still getting the MC3. So every group was led by an 8412, and then they would do the training that needed to be done, but they would also be able to talk to one another and stuff like that. And then it just bred, you were able to see, because the thing is too is that like, I don't know how big your RS is, but like that's another thing that, a big part of it too is, okay, well, how big is our RS for everyone to get together? And the thing is that like, if your RSS isn't making mission, another RSS across, the state or whatever, they
Mm-hmm.
may not care that you're not making mission because they don't know you. Yeah, you're a Marine, but bro, I don't know you. I don't want to give you my dep and holds. I have no reason to give you my dep and holds, bro. But if we create that unit cohesion, then I have a reason to give you my dep and holes, because that's my boy Gonzo. I want to take care of him. You know what? That's my dude. I'm gonna help him out, and then when I need it, he'll help me out, and that's the point. But we've lost that.
Yeah, and I would say it goes back into like when you ask me like, what are you doing to stay successful to make it through this beast that we got? Honestly, I'll preach to this, man. Having a tight knit group, which is the FHRCs, like you guys are all over the hill within other states and whatnot. Like you gotta be boys. I don't care if you barely see the guy. Like we gotta call each other. So that when you do need that hookup, you do need that advice, you need that help, you're gonna get it. But if you're not doing it, you're not gonna get it. Why should I help you if I don't know who you are, brother? Like that's kind of what it is at this point. But I got a tight knit group of staffers at SC, so I could definitely appreciate that. When I got those long drives home and I'm calling, I'm like, bro, you gotta figure this out. Let's go. And it helps. It 100% helps. And I think the recruiters need to do the same thing. If a recruiter's not
Yeah.
calling somebody from another side, hey, bro, I'm struggling. What are you doing to kill it again?
Yo,
And they gotta do
yeah,
it.
like, yeah, my boy that I did the episode today with Manny, he literally he said to me, he was like, you know what I do all the time, what I was doing all the time. I was like, what's that? He was like, bro, I would call people like when I saw him on the leaderboard on Chris, I would call them and say, hey man, congratulations on that contract, and they'd be like, who is this? And he'd be like, oh, it's Cesar Torres from Tom's River, and they didn't even know who he was. Or he would call and say, hey, yo, fucking this dude over here in AC, yo, you were a four, boom, thank you. And he was saying thank you as just a recruiter, like, hey, bro, thanks for doing that shit. And they were like, oh shit, you didn't have to do that. But again, like I never even thought about that. I never thought about doing that. Never did it. I never did it for 4 years. But I was like, wow, you know what? Like you're right. Like we should be saying thank you to one another. And a big thing for me is that when it comes to like you just said, like having that group of people that you can come to and talk to, that's a big one of the reasons why I started the podcast is because you have Marines, man, that aren't vocal about their outside of the office things. So
Mm-hmm.
there's Marines that are, I know Marines personally, and that's why I've never really told this before, but I kind of, one of the many reasons why I started this part of the podcast was I hate hearing people complain about recruiting duty because I've known people personally that have lost children on the duty. Like myself, like my wife had, I think, two miscarriages while we were on the duty, and I went to work and I made mission. I had, one of my close friends, he had a daughter who was born, and like the next day she had passed away, and he made it off the duty. I have another close friend of mine who had two strokes while on recruiting duty. I have another recruiter that I know who, his wife up and left him, took his kids away. He came home from work on a late night Saturday, and his whole entire house was empty, and it was just him. And like for me, when I hear these things and I live through these things, I'm like, bro, like there's recruiters out there who won't ever deal with half of the shit that we've dealt with, and they're quitting. And it's
Yeah.
like, and the reason why I started the podcast was for people to come on here and be like, hey man, like I am or I was where you are, but I made it out. These are some of the things that I dealt with. I dealt with like myself. I'll be honest. I was on the duty for 4 years. I dealt with heavy alcoholism for like 3 years, bro. Like I was drunk a lot of the time. I had a huge issue with alcoholism, but I was a successful recruiter, so I hit it because I was like, "Oh, I'm successful. Like it's not a problem." You know what I mean? But like
Yep.
that's why I started. That's why I started this because I was like, you know what? There's a lot of people who feel so alone on this duty because no one wants to talk about it. And if they're not going to talk about it at all hands, then you know what? I want to talk about it here. Because the reality of it is that like in my mind, when you give your go, like I never had the ability to give a going away speech. So like when my going away speech was going to be that, was going to be like, hey, listen, man, if you're brand new here or if you're on your way out, like at the end of the day, like don't think you can't make it, because there's so many people who've lost so much but have made it off of this duty. So, like, my question for you would be, in this time that you've been out here on this duty, how has it, like, what have you gone through that has really, like, showed you, like, wow, I'm resilient. Like, I can, like, this is, like, this right here is going to be the pinnacle of my career. I can go forth and do even better. Like, or if you don't feel like that, that's fine too. But, like, what have you gone through? And if there's there anything there that you can share with us that you've, like, wow, like, I've dealt with this and I'm like, I've overcome it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I got you. So I would say it's a little bit of a self experience and just seeing it firsthand. I'll start with the firsthand piece. Like you said, you see Marines go through the alcoholism. The great Marines who are affected by the duty make a bad decision, get a DUI. You see the Marines who invest so much time in what they're doing for the mission, the command, and for themselves. There and then the wire step, get up and leave. Not I don't know what happens internally, but you see all these things happen. You see the depression. You see the dudes who you want to seek self help, and it's just so much between anxiety, alcoholism, and it's so much to take in, and you see it firsthand. And you're like, whoa, what's going on here? Like it kind of feels like a tunnel of toxicity, and and that's when you ask yourself, like, am I going to make it out of here? And the answer is yes, you are going to make it out of here. The goal is to keep everything intact on the way out. And what I think what happens for the most part is most individuals keep everything intact. But you got the few Marines who they get out after this tour because they couldn't keep it together, or they felt like the rest of the Marine Corps career was going to be this duty, and they just finish it. I mean, or they do lose their family, and they do have these the miscarriages, or they have I was a victim of it too. I had my son was born, and I was as soon as I got back from the hospital, I had laptop open because boss man's like, hey, what we got going? And the Marine that I am, I'm like, I got my son in my hand. And I'm over here opening up my Chris, like, let's do this. Like, I could do both. Let's do it.
Yeah.
I got my
Yeah.
wife.
Yeah.
You talked to my wife. She was making TCs with me. Like, she was about that life.
Yeah.
And I appreciate her for
Amen.
that because
Amen.
that's what got me through. Because when, like, going to the personal, when you're stressed out, whether it be, you're the recruiter on the streets or you're the staff and CEO trying to make stuff happen for your team, like, you're going to be stressed out. And when it takes a toll into your family time and everything else, like, it makes you realize, like, wow, like, I'm giving so much more, but what is the cost? And it is definitely for a good cause, but you have to ask yourself, like, man, like, at what point in time do I let go of the gas for a split second to take care of myself, my mental, my family, my Marines? And you have to have the balance of two. If you do not balance the two and you push the guys to the dirt, you push yourself to the dirt, you're going to be affected. And that's with the alcoholism, the depression, and anything else that you can think of that we're going to talk about. But to get through it, I'm making it, and I'm so proud of it. And like I was saying before we began, like, I will get that ribbon and I will look at that thing like, yep, made it. Let's go back to business.
Yeah.
That's that, man. That's how it feels.
And it's something that I just want to talk about because you just brought it up, like the grind, right? So when I took over my second office, I had taken the office over from an 8412, and the 8412. So a lot of people don't know this, and I really haven't shared it, but a lot of people ask me all the time. Like one of my best friends, he's an 8412 gunnery sergeant Ledbetter. The other day, he asked me, he was like, "Bro, why the fuck did you take over RSS Monmouth?" He was like, "Why the fuck did you do it?" Because if I hadn't taken over RSS Monmouth, right now I would be an 8412. When I had one of my first office ever was at RSS Atlantic City. When I left RSS Atlantic City, I was at 105 contracting and 105 shipping. So if I had never left there, I would have just kept going up. I would have just kept going up, right? Yeah. But what had happened was I had a RSS Monmouth is where I came from. I was a poolee there. I was a recruiter there. My Marines that I was an A gunner were there. And while I was in Atlantic City, I would get calls from my best friend and from his wife at 3 a.m. His wife would call me and be like, "Bennett, why the fuck is my husband still at work?" Can you do anything? Can you talk to somebody?" And I was like, "No, it's not my place. Like, I don't, and I would have calls and talk conversations, but it really wasn't my place. You know what I mean? I'm just another step into it. See, I'm at the ARI, the RI, you know. So eventually, I kept getting these calls like, "Bro, I'm having a long night. I gotta get up. I'm dealing with anxiety. I'm dealing with depression. I'm dealing with this and this for that." So one night, I looked over at my wife and I was like, "You know what?" I was like, I'm gonna tell the CEO tomorrow that I want to take over Mama." And my wife was like, "Well, one, it's closer to home because it was a 2-hour drive to Atlantic City. But
Yeah.
now, if I did this, I would be in Monmouth County where I live." So my wife was like, "I'm not mad at that." But my wife literally was like, "But Doug," I was like, "What's up?" She was like, "You're living easily in Atlantic City." My wife was like, "You're making mission. You're over contract." Like my wife knows all of the verbiage.
Yeah. Same
My
here.
wife knows my wife knows everything about anything. So my wife was like talking to me like she was like some senior RI, and she was like, "Doug," she was like, "Doug, you're over contracting, you're overwriting, you're fine. Why would you leave?" And I looked at my wife and I was like, "Well, first of all, my dream has always been to be a staff NCOIC of where I became a poolie at because of Master Gunny Pat and because of Master Sergeant Diaz." And I was like, and to be honest, like I wanted to be better than Master Sergeant Diaz, so I was like, I want to show him that I could be better than him. And then on top of that, I have my Marines that I groomed from brand new recruiters to senior recruiters calling me, telling me about how they're failing, they don't get to go home to their families, and all this shit. So I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm going to step in and I'm going to change that. And I called the CEO, I called the master, and well, at first I called my RI, my master, and I was like, "Hey," and I knew him since I was a Lance Corporal, and I was like, "Hey, listen, master," I was like 12 o'clock at night. I was like, "Hey, master," I was like, "Listen, I want to take over Monmouth," and he was like, "What?" And I was like, "Master, I want to take over Monmouth." I was like, "I'm telling you right now, I will make mission. We will make mission. I will take Monmouth back." Because when I had left there, we were number 2 in the state. At this time, we were number 14 in the state. So we went from number 2 in the state to number 14 in the state. And there's only 14 RSSs.
Yeah.
So I told him, I said, "Hey, Master," I said, "Keith," I said, "Master, I will bring us back. We will not miss mission. I will make mission for you." And when I made this phone call at that time, they had missed mission for 8 months straight.
Wow.
And they were working 8 a.m. to 5 a.m. Like they were working literally straight. Like, and that's why when I hear people complain, I'm like, "Bro, no, yo, fuck you." These dudes were literally working 8 a.m. in the morning. They would report to work at 8 a.m. and they weren't going home till like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, bro, just to be back there at 8 a.m. And now, mind you, they were still missing mission. So I confronted the CO, I confronted the RI, and they were like, honest. At first, they were like, "No." They were like, "You're not an 8412. We're not going to put a brand new staff sergeant and a brand new boss in charge of a 1 to 5." So whatever. About 2 or 3 weeks go by. All of a sudden, boom, shit changes. They make me the staff NCOIC. So now I'm like, you know what? I have to. I said I was going to be the change. Now I have to be. So the first thing I did when I walked in the office was I was like, "Listen, if you write me 4 contracts, you're going to go on a week of leave. If you write me 2 contracts, I guarantee you weekends off." And at first, even though they were my boy, even though I knew every recruiter in the office, like they were my boys, they still were skeptical because they were
Yep.
like, "Bro, like I know you're my boy, but like, are you just saying this because you want to make mission, or is like this the real deal?" So my boy, who I decided to make my A gunner, because I had told him Morales, my boy Morales, when we were recruiters together, I had told him, I said, "Hey, if I'm ever a staff in COIC, you're going to be my A gunner." So I was able to come back and I made him my A gunner. It was the first thing I did. I was like, hey, you're my A gunner. And me and him sat down in my room, my office, and I remember that day he was like, so what's up? And I was like, listen, bro, this is my plan. And I told him, I said, hey, I'm going to give the Marines off this time, this time, this time. And he was like, but you got to do it. And I was like, I know. I was like, bro, I know. I was like, and you're going to hold me accountable. I was like, and I told him that. I was like, bro, if I promise these Marines something and I don't hold them accountable, I want you to stop me in my tracks and tell me that I'm fucking up. And that's what he did. So I said to him, but when I did this, I said to him, I said, Mo, you got to do me a favor. He said, what? I said, you got to be the first Marine to write 4 so that I can show that I'm being real. He said, good to go. January 1st, 2021, he went out, crushed it. He fucking 2020. He went, got 4 contracts. I said that day, called the CEO on the phone, hey, you have a week off of leave. Good. See you later. Go home. Immediately, my whole office saw that, and they were like, wait a minute. We just went from working 13-hour days or more, and you're telling me if I find you 4, I can have a week off? If I find you 2, I'm guaranteed weekends off? I was like, yes. Bro, we made mission for the next 11 months straight. And it was because, and a lot of people don't agree with that. A lot of people go, well, I shouldn't have to work for my time off. Bro, on recruiting duty, you are in a results-driven business. Bro, that's the only way to work here, man. Like that's my reality. If you're not writing your 2 a month, then you're not putting in your piece of the pie.
Yeah, I'll tell you, like, if you're the one in your office making moves, then that gives you the leg to stand down as the recruiter to the boss. Hey, boss man, I'm popping smoke. By the way, here's this package. She'll go up next week. Like, then you got a leg to stand on. You talking about, hey, I'm going home early on a Friday, but I ain't got nothing for next week, this week, or ever. No, we're not playing that game. What are we talking about? So I definitely agree with that. It gives you, and I would say with what you do, with what you did was awesome. A lot of Marines will say, hey, I'm gonna hook you up with that time, big dog. When it comes, contracts or no contracts, there's no time involved. And that's the biggest way to lose your team. It's like, I'm gonna promise you some time, but you're not gonna get that time.
Well, and that's the thing. I'm glad you said that, but that's why I put the onus on him. And I told him that. I was like, hey, listen, man, if I'm gonna get carried away. And I was like, if I fuck up, and I told my Marines that. I was like, listen, if I get so into it and I fuck up and I don't give you a week off or whatever, like correct me, bro. So like there was times where my boy Durkee would come at me and he would be like, at first he would come in my office, he'd be like, can I close the door? But yo, what's up, man? And me and him, I tell you, bro, me and him were best friends. But we understood that now I was the boss and you're not. And that was it. And he would come into my office, he'd close the door, he'd be like, yo, can I talk to him? I'm like, what's up, right? And he'd be like, Doug, you told me that I could go home if I had my 2 for the month. It's Friday at 5:00. Why am I not home yet? And then I would be like, you're not wrong. And I would apologize and I'd be like, you go home. My boy Morales, he'd be like, hey, you said if we did this, we would do this. And he would correct me on it. He would do that course correction. And that's the thing about it is that, like, people forget that, number one, we're human beings. And you get so caught up in the mission and the day-to-day and the grind and this and this. All we need is the correction. Like, hey, man, you did say this. So, like, and where I got this all from was my buddy, Gunny Ujama. He's at 8412. He was like, hey, man, when I go into any RSS, what I do is I write a contract up. It's like a counseling. And in that counseling, I make agreements. For 2 contracts, you get this. For 4 contracts, you get this, da-da-da. And then I have each Marines, sign it. Because at the end of the day, if you're doing what you have to do to meet phase line and to meet mission, well, then why should I be punishing you? Like and that was a way for me to get them to understand, like, okay, if you write your 2, you have the rest of the month off Saturday, Sunday. So now what this would do is if I get my last 2 at the end of the month, well, that's only one weekend off. But if I get my two at the beginning of the month, well, then I have the rest of the month every Saturday, Sunday off.
Yeah.
And then
True.
and then they would be like, and then when they didn't have that time off, I would be able to look at Morales and be like, bitch, he's been home for 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's valid.
Like, like don't tell me I don't care about you, bitch. You don't care about yourself. And then when your wife is making Facebook statuses about how her husband's never home, like, and that's the thing too, is like I had a buddy of mine. I'll call him out, my boy Murphy. Bro, his wife makes mad statuses about, oh, my husband's never home. My husband's never home. I'll call him up. Hey, what are you doing? Nothing. What are you doing? I'm on the shitter. What are you doing? Instagram, TikTok. So are you not home because you can't be home, or are you been at home because you don't work all day?
Yep.
So if you're a spouse out there listening to this, ask your husband, what does he need to do to go home? Because it's the reality of it, bro.
Yeah, I know my thing. I like to introduce myself immediately at the beginning. Like, hey, this is why your husband won't be home, and you can ask him why, because he knows what he needs to do, and you know what he needs to do. I had a spouse hit me up saying, "Hey, cut him some slack. He's having a hard time." I'm like, I want to be polite, but nah, that's not how it gets done. Like, he has to do what's expected, and then we go from there. If you don't do the minimum of what's expected, then what are we talking about? He's the
Bro,
reason why he's not home.
Bro, I'm glad you said that because it's funny. So my wife probably gonna laugh when I tell this, but I'm not gonna say his name because it would be rude for me to say his name. But so I had this Marine who his wife, no, they weren't even married. They were fiancés. His fiance, he had gotten a cold and he was feeling under the weather, and his boss made him go to work.
Hmm.
So his wife called his boss and said, he can't come to work. He's under the weather. He's laying in bed. He doesn't feel good. His boss said he needs to get to work. Put him on the phone. Then she called the commanding officer. And it's like, bro, what are you doing? Like, what is going on? Like, you're talking about, bro, come on, man. And now this dude is off the duty. He's a recruiter now. He's off the recruiter duty, but he's back, in the fleet. But it's like, bro, what are you doing, man? Like, your wife is on conference calls talking about how you don't get enough sleep with your bunny rabbits and about, like, well, and it's like, bro, what are you doing, bro? And it's just funny. But that's the thing about it. Like I said, man, and like you said, like, I like that you said that because, like me, when I had Marines check in, the first thing I would do is take them and their family out to dinner. I would take them and their kids, their wife to dinner, and I would talk, and my wife would talk to them like, "Hey, I've been on the duty for 4 years. I know what it's like to be a spouse. I know how it is to be on this duty. Here are some tips. Da 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 da. If you need to call me, call me. If I can be there, I have kids. We can hang out. Like we can go to the mall together. We can do this together. We can do errands together. Da 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 da. My wife's a
Yeah,
very personal person, so my wife wanted to just be that outlet for them. And I would tell them the same thing, like you said. Hey, this is my expectations of them. But if they don't meet them, then they failed, and that's why they don't come home too early. That's why they work the Saturdays. That's why they're working the Sundays. It's because during the week, Monday through Friday, they didn't get what they had to do.
yeah. And it goes back to all the salty recruiters was like, if you're not, I think you mentioned it, like you got your feet kicked up on your desk and it's, 10, 11 o'clock, you're the reason why you're not going home early. And that's the end of it, man. If you're not trying to get what you need as soon as possible, then, and you're just okay with working late, because I take trips sometimes as I'm on my way home and I stop at some RSS. Marines are just there to be there. Like, bro, we could have went home a long time ago. What are we doing? Like, let's go home. I
Yeah,
know if I
yeah.
can get home, I'm gonna get home 100%.
No, and
So
I'm not gonna say my wife's watching this right now downstairs, and I'm not gonna sit here and say that there wasn't times where like I would finish work and I'd be like, hey, let's get a drink at the bar. Because
oh
like
yeah,
at the end of the day, you're boys, you work together, you had a long day, and you're like, you know what, let's go get a drink, or you celebrate, hey, we made phase line or whatever. But like you said, like so many people, and I'll be real, bro. In my opinion, anybody on that Facebook stat and that Facebook group who's constantly talking the shit are substandard recruiters. Because the recruiters who are making a mission don't have time to be making some bullshit ass status. Like that's the reality of it, bro. Like I guarantee you that anybody on that status is people who had like were subpar, well below 1.5. Like come the fuck on, because you don't. Because if you were doing what you had to do to make mission, you wouldn't feel that way mentally and physically. You know what I mean? At least that's how I feel. Like you're that disgruntled because you were trash, you weren't good, and you're okay with not make being you were okay with being mediocre, and it was okay with you.
Yeah, I think you got a lot of those, and then at the same time, and I just skimmed through the page, but there's a lot of dude. I think it should be made for just memes and some shit talk, and the general. I need some help. You guys got me. But I think because we're Marines, we're automatically going to talk some shit, no matter you're asking for help or you're just putting up a meme,
No,
and it's
exactly,
good
and
and
that's the thing
bad.
too. Yeah, no, and that's the thing too is that you have Marines that are actually genuinely asking for help, but then you got dudes on there. Like the other day, I saw someone who was like, "Oh yeah," I was like, "When did you recruit? 2003, 2007." Bitch, why the fuck are you talking? Like, bro, that's crazy. Like, and you're on here just starting some shit. Like, you're still that disgruntled and upset about recruiting duty from 2003. Like, you're that upset 18 years later, bro.
Yeah, my plan is in the future I'll just be sipping on my tea, watching the memes, and see what the Marines are going through at that current time. But
Yeah.
it is what it is.
So,
But
so here's
good.
my question for you, man. Like, I've been going for like about an hour, almost an hour and a half. Right now, as you transition, you're about to. What do you have? Like 6 months left?
No, not even. Well, let's go 3.5.
Okay. So right now, what are you? Are you Like it's something I try to ask people. Like, are you nervous about getting back to the fleet? Just excited? Like how? Like, like what are you looking forward towards?
I would say nervous because you spend all this time learning the new trade as you're that Lance Corp on the block trying to learn the MOS, and I feel like for the most part I've mastered it, and now I got to go back to a community that I neglected for the last 2 years. So that's a little nerve wracking. Uh, I would say on the other side is like you because you're away from Marine Fleet life or just Marine life for the most part, other than what you're doing with your Marines on recruit duty, to transition back to that, get back to early morning PTs all the time, or the battalion runs and all that good stuff. So it's like, oh snap, I'm going back to that again. I've been kind of disconnected, so a little nerve wracking, but excited to go back to it because this beast is definitely open for me. And then I'll just say preparing myself. I would like to say that physical fitness is obviously a Marine's top priority. So getting back to that fleet mindset, like okay, I'm putting this pack on again. And I'm gonna start running again to get back to fleet mode. Because as a recruiter, I'm grabbing my coffee from Starbucks and I'm running straight to the school. That's really that's my cardio for the day. So it's
Yeah.
that's I would say that's been a get back in the mindset. Like okay, camis are going back on. These blues and get put on every now and then. So just that transition is what I'm looking forward to, but it's kind of nerve wracking to get back into it. So
Got you.
yeah,
What about your family?
I mean, I can't wait. I know I'm ready to be a father that comes home at a decent time. I know my wife. My wife's prior service Navy, so she knows how it was before we came on recruiting duty, and she knows that there's a little bit more time to flex. So she's looking forward to that. We'll be going down to North Carolina. I've never been stationed on there, so we'll see how it goes. Um, And I said, just can't wait for it. Like I said, learned a lot. I grew the most on the duty, and I'm ready to use the tools and lead from the front when I get back over there.
So one of the last questions I want to ask you: how have you grown from this duty? Because a lot of people talk about the negative aspects of it. A lot of people talk about this wasn't good for me. It tore my life apart. Two questions are: how did you make it out of here with your family, your wife, your child intact? And how did you grow from this duty? What did you gain from it?
Got you. So I would say in my life, I put it as I'm gonna sink or swim, and I choose swim every single time. So as all these obstacles got thrown at me, the ones that would like feel like my whole life is getting torn apart, whether it be my career, my family, my mental, whatever you name, uh, the fact that the obstacle in the path became the path, that whole concept tied in to everything in the last 3 years, where it's like, okay, well now that I've completed this, anything is possible. You tell all these individuals, if you complete boot camp, anything is possible after that. I feel like if I complete this SDA, anything is possible, and there's no reason why I can't be successful where I go moving forward. So that I would say that's it there.
Word, man. All right, no doubt, man. So is there anything that you want to end with? Is there anything that any advice that you would give yourself, like when you were coming out here? Is there any advice that you would give anybody, like, hey, you're on your way out from BRC? This is how you should act. There's some things mentally, physically that you should do. Any advice that you would want to give anybody who's like just graduating BRC or was just histed?
Gotcha. So for the Marines leaving BRC, um, separate work and family, but at the same time integrate it. Honestly, the things that got me through as a canvassing recruiter, setting up those times, AC at the mall or pick up lunch with my wife, having a stop by the office to make my last bit of TCs with me, hooking and jabbing, that definitely got me through. Uh, whether you're the staff at TRC or you're the recruit on the street, find that person to vent to, whether it be a family member, another Marine in the fleet, another Marine on the duty. You need that vent time. Uh, and just be prepared to grind. Like, don't be prepared to making excuses. You got you got too many stories at BRC and prior to going to the streets of, oh, this is gonna suck. Okay, well, we already know it's gonna suck. I'm not. When you check into the streets, your bosses shouldn't be telling you that it's gonna be a great time. He's gonna tell you it's gonna suck, and be prepared for the grind because we're about to make this shit happen. So have that mindset, that hard nosed mentality, and you should be fine. And there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Every month that you go to those R&Rs, you will see one Marine start leaving. Next thing you know, you're the last Marine checking out, going back. You made it through. You got that ribbon on your chest, and it's time to go back to it. Uh, but I would like to say, I guess for the staff and TRCs mainly, be the example, get in the trenches, get away from your desk. Like that's the biggest thing. Uh, get away from your desk, and you'll be fine. If you're not doing that, if you're not doing the occasional tags here and there, sending occasional appointments, then you're part of the problem. It's not your Marines. It's not the recruiters who came ATCs. It's you. And that's that.
Bro, if you're an armchair quarterback, then you are horrible. Just stop. Just put your resignation papers in, man. Because that's the reality of it, man. Like you just said, bro. Like if you can't get up and set your Marine, like I remember being a recruiter, man, and my Gunny Ujama, one of the things I always will thank him for, and that's where I got my leadership from as a staff in COIC was I would go out ACing and I would come back from a long day. Like I'd be going all day, like table setups, like all this shit, and I would have a bad day. And then I would come in the office and I would hear him say, "Hey, Sergeant Rodriguez, I got you a same day appointment. They're on their way in right now." And he'd be like, "Hey, Staff Sergeant so and so, hey, I got you a same day appointment. They're on their way in now." Or, "Hey, I got you an appointment for tomorrow." Da da da. And then eventually, as I grew up in the Marine Corps and as I grew up on the duty, I asked him that question, and he was like, "Bro, if I got to deal with MEPS and I got to deal with ops and I got to deal with all this other stuff, he's like, what's stopping me from sitting down and making phone calls and getting same day appointments and doing follow ups for you?" He was like, "If I can help you in that way and bring you something to the table while you're out there trying to bring us something, you're going to be thankful for that when you walk in the office and you have an unexpected appointment, you have an unexpected interview, and you're going to be like, wow." And it's not that I want you to work for me even more, but if I prove that to you that I'm here for you and you're here for me, then you're gonna want to work for me more. You're gonna remember like, oh, hey, I know he's always looking out for me. And that's what and like you said, like you can't be that armchair quarterback. Go out with your Marines in AC. Go out with your Marines in TC. Like I don't know how many times in my life I've seen command members come on deck and the staff in COIC is one, nowhere to be found, or two, in their office. And it's like if I was an 8412 or a command member and I showed up to your office, I would want you and I called you like, "Hey, I'm on your way to your office." I would want you to answer the phone and be like, "Hey, I'm at a table set up." That's what I
Yeah.
would want. I would want you to tell me, "Hey, I'm out ACing with one of my Marines right now," but that never happens.
Yeah. I I don't want to keep going, but I think a lot of times Steph just sees 10, oh, command group's coming down. Let me hang out at the office. Nah, command group's coming down. Cool. You can meet me at this school, but that's where I'm at right now. I'm making moves. And that's how it should
Exactly,
be.
bro. I'm doing my job, bro. I'm doing my job. You want to come do, you want to come do a 369 on a Marine? Okay, go to his school. Come watch him do his job. Don't do a 369 sitting in the office while he's not doing any of the 369. Come do his MOJT out on the streets while he's in his school. Come do my MOJT as a staff NCOIC as I'm out doing work. Like come out into the field with me and show me how you train me on how I should be at school tables, how I should be at schools, how I should be conducting myself. Come out let them see a CO. Let them see what a master guns looks like.
Oh yeah.
But hey, man, I appreciate the hell out of you, man. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate a number, and also, bro. Before I cap this off, bro. Thank you to your poolee, man.
For sure.
That was an awesome time, man. I really appreciate that. That was an amazing time. I'm excited to do that with other poolies across across McRick, because I think it's just an awesome thing to have the person who's dealing with it as they're going through it be able to talk through it. So that's the number, definitely. But hey, man, thanks again for coming on. I'm excited for you to be done with this and move on back to the Fleet Marine Corps. So thanks for coming on, man. I'll definitely do another episode with you, as you transition off the duty. But thanks again, brother. I appreciate it.
For sure, Ben. Appreciate you. Appreciate what you're doing. Love the podcast, and for the Marines who don't see it or hear it enough, I'm slyly dropping gems. Like, hey, go check this podcast out. 'Cause, there's some stuff in there that will make you laugh, and you'll be able to relate with it. So appreciate what you're doing, and you're definitely doing your thing. And thanks again for reaching out to that Pulley. I know she appreciated that a lot. So take it
Thanks
easy,
a
bro.
lot, brother. All right, you too.
Yep.